All right, thank you for your interest in my paper. In this paper, I study how creditors influence their borrowers' environmental activity. In particular, I focus on liquidation value's role in incentivizing creditors to discipline environmental behavior. The idea is that poor environmental activities may cause contamination, reducing the liquidation value of firm assets, which is costly for lenders. First, when the borrower defaults, an important way in which lenders recover their claim is by selling firm assets. Second, diminished liquidation value reduces creditors' bargaining power during future renegotiations. Thus, the prediction is that creditor control leads to better environmental outcomes when environmental contamination has a significant adverse effect on asset value. This is important because banks are under increasing pressure to exit polluting industries, and removing bank debt from polluting firms' capital structure can negatively affect the environment because banks' voice might play a positive role on impacting the environmental practices. Understanding how governance by creditors affects environmental policy is the first step to understanding the trade-off of choosing exit versus voice. The empirical challenge in this case is that we need a setting that allows us to vary the adverse effect pollution has on asset value. I addressed this challenge by looking at the introduction of bona fide protective purchases defense, or BFPP, at the end of 2001. BFPP reduces purchasers' cleanup liability if the purchaser does due diligence prior to the purchase and takes reasonable steps to limit releases after the purchase. Furthermore, law change only protects purchasers from circular liabilities, but not RCRA liabilities. Therefore, I define the treated group as industries less exposed to RCRA liabilities, and the control group as industries more exposed to RCRA liabilities. I then compare changes in pollution activity surrounding the passage of BFPP when there's high and low creditor control. And I proxy for the creditor control using financial covenant violations. The effect of BFPP is ambiguous for non-violators because for firms acquiring new property, BFPP creates incentives to take reasonable steps to limit releases. On the other hand, for violating firms, after the introduction of BFPP, BFPP protected pollution should increase because the adverse effect on asset value is reduced, and also because prior research shows that heightened creditor control leads to increased divestitures and limits firms' expansionary activities such as acquisitions. In the middle of the poster, I present my specification, where my specification is a triple difference empirical design. The outcome variable that I look at is log of 1 plus the pounds of ground pollution. The variable of interest is a triple interaction between violation, BFPP protection, and post-BFPP indicator. The identifying assumption is that the effect of a covenant violation on polluting activities that are more or less exposed to BFPP protection exhibits parallel trends. In the middle of the poster, I present my main results. I plotted two difference in difference estimates surrounding BFPP passage for violators and non-violators. We see that after the introduction of BFPP, violators increase pollution that is protected by BFPP defense. On the other hand, BFPP has little effect on polluting activities for non-violating firms. These results are consistent with the idea that reducing pollution's adverse effect on asset value disincentivizes lenders to discipline environmental behavior. The table below presents the point estimates from an OLS regression. The estimates suggest that the effect of BFPP is 14% to 25% compared to the sample mean, which is about 1.5 to 4 times larger than the effect of parent liability protection and the impact of reducing lenders' exposure to environmental liabilities found in prior research. I also provide additional tests to further support these findings. For example, a placebo test that uses water and air emissions as the outcome variables suggests that there is no differential response to BFPP among violators and non-violators. Since cleanup liabilities for purchasers only apply to land emissions, these findings cast doubt on the argument that the results on ground pollution are driven by other shocks that cause BFPP exposed industries to increase pollution or total pollution during heightened creditor control. To conclude, my findings show that increasing pollution's adverse effect on asset value incentivizes creditors to discipline corporate environmental behavior. More broadly, these results highlight a novel implication of the market for corporate assets. Namely, the demand for corporate assets affects how the financial market, particularly creditors, influence corporate environmental policy. Right. Thank you for paying attention to my paper.